What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Bring the Juice podcast. I'm your co-host, Derek Larger, and with me today is Cody Felger, still on his vacation. Cody, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I had to take a break here to discuss this breaking news. Maybe not as big of an impact, potentially as big of a surprise, but I had a few minutes of downtime, so I thought that we would discuss the Colts' most recent move here.
Yeah, and obviously we had a lot to talk about from yesterday with Andrew about the DeForest Buckner acquisition that we got and a lot of the news around the NFL. But today is the news that Colts fans have been desperately wanting to hear about, which is whether or not we would be signing a quarterback for this upcoming season. And today the Colts did that. Today the Colts just signed former Los Angeles Chargers quarterback Phillip Rivers to a 1-year deal worth $25 million. So it looks like Phillip Rivers is basically going to be here for 1 year, and it's going to be a make it or break it kind of deal for the 37-year-old quarterback. Cody, what are you thinking about this pick? What do you think of all this?
Yeah, it definitely is, Derek. I think it's a move that, is kind of like the Colts believe that they're good enough. And obviously when Andrew Luck retired last year, their quarterback play wasn't up to par. And that really impacted, them as far as, a couple games out from the playoffs. And I think quarterback play was a huge reason why. So this move tells me that the Colts believe that 2019 season, which we'll probably talk about in a second, they believe that was a fluke in a lot of ways. I believe there were some factors as well, that'd be the offensive line, and then some other factors. And there's also, the Frank Reich, Nick Sirianni connection. They both have worked with Rivers in the past, so that was obvious. But the 1-year deal, I think, is very telling. I thought maybe it could be a 1 or 2 year deal. I think the 1-year deal it indicates to me that the Colts are probably going to try to address that quarterback position in the second round. And if they don't do it in the second round, definitely the third round. They're going to address it with one of those top 3 picks there. I think they just have to. They have to find a guy to develop. And it also indicates to me that I think they could potentially be moving Jacoby Brissett somewhere. It depends, obviously, how much teams value Brissett and how much they could get out of it. But honestly, I'm fine with just getting rid of Brissett, and I don't care if you get a 7th-round pick. I don't care if you get a 5th-round pick. I'm just okay with getting rid of that contract, and it saves you over $10 million if you do indeed trade Jacoby Brissett as opposed to just outright cutting him, which is about $8 million or so. So I'm totally okay with trading Brissett, and if not, just cutting him loose, saving you some money for the cap space, and if you want to dip back into free agency, having some extra money to do that, and then also releasing Brian Hoyer, which will save you a couple million as well. So totally okay with it. It's been really rumored, Derek, throughout the offseason. Phillip Rivers to the Colts has been a thing that we've heard over and over and over. And so, typically it's weird because, you hear all these rumors for the Colts, and they seem like the last couple of years they rarely come true. But for this one, it makes sense for both sides. It's not like the Colts are committing, a multi-year deal to Phillip Rivers, who's late 30s now. A 1-year deal, so it's like if things don't work out, the Colts don't have to pay him beyond this year. And so I thought it was a good move, and especially after the Buckner trade with that 13th pick is off the board now. I think it's a good move, and then you can draft the guy and develop him. Doesn't have to start right away in that second round, and I'm personally a fan of it. I know a lot of people are against it, but I like it because of a couple of reasons. And I mentioned the Frank Reich Sirianni connection, the offensive line, and then, if the Colts revamp, some of the wide receiver core as well. I think the Colts have an all-around solid team. I think the quarterback play was a major hampering, and obviously injuries factored into that last year. But I'm a fan of the move. We've talked about it, Derek, on the podcast before, and if you haven't yet, go check out our kind of breakdown a couple months ago on should the Colts sign Phillip Rivers, would it make sense? I think we kind of both just are feeling that way still with the signing now. So if you haven't heard that, go check that video out. Kind of explains in more detail our thoughts on why we think Rivers would be a good fit.
Yeah, and when we look at the contract, you mentioned it, how it's a 1-year thing, so makes you wonder what kind of ideas the Colts have for that quarterback room when it comes to the draft. I mean, to me, this obviously spells that they either they have somebody in the draft that they're really eyeing right now. That's what my feeling is right here. You wouldn't have given Phillip Rivers a 1-year deal unless you knew that there was somebody that you were going to target in this draft, whether it be, trading back into the first round with some of those picks you have, or, taking somebody in the second round that you think will be there. It's going to be interesting for sure when it comes to draft time. But, again, I'm in favor of the signing. Wasn't necessarily high strung on the uh 25 million. Would have preferred that to have been a little bit lower, but then again, it's only a 1-year thing, so it's not like it's a huge risk for anybody. But the good news is, yeah, like you said, with that 25 million this year, trying to win now, and if it doesn't work out, you're going to get all that cap room back next year. But right now, as it sits, the Colts are sitting at $22.3 million. They said that if they get rid of Brissett and Hoyer this offseason, and basically right about now, you can get about $38.5 million right now. So $38.5 million, still a good amount of cap space to get somebody if the Colts are in win now mode. That's basically what it is. If they're in win now mode, they get rid of Brissett and Hoyer, you are saving about $16 million in cap space there. Is a great option to be able to move things and get another good free agent. And that's really what I think they might end up doing. But then again, it's nice to see that, I think obviously they're going to have to get rid of one of them, whether or not they draft a quarterback or not. I think honestly, you might see that if they do get rid of Brissett and Hoyer, that's almost conclusive that they're going to get a quarterback in the draft. But basically, I think the weird thing is, like, obviously some of the fans are basically conflicted with how to treat Rivers, right? I've heard some people say, that's not really an upgrade, or some say it is an upgrade. I mean, and obviously the 25 million might get some people the wrong kind of image, but overall, I think this is a good option for them, and I'm very excited to see what this season has in store for him and for the Colts.
Yeah, for sure. And, we kind of discussed it on previous podcasts, Derek. It's like, what would you prefer? Would you prefer a quarterback who's kind of scared to throw the trigger, and what Jacoby Brissett from what we saw from him last year? Or do you want a guy who, the Chargers, despite all the Phillip Rivers flaws last year, the Chargers were the 6th best passing offense in the league. And so I think that's significant, and that's a big deal. But, obviously he turned the ball over, so it's like, can you live with those turnovers if you also have a lot of big plays, and if your passing game is more effective, I guess? And maybe Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni feel like, we know Phillip Rivers, we know this guy. We can help limit those turnovers. I mean, we saw that with Andrew Luck, back in the day. I mean, when he was with Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni in that first year, I mean, he had one of the best years in terms of touchdown to interception ratio, and just turnovers. His turnovers went tremendously down from previous years. And so it's all interesting to me to see. And it appears that they do believe that they can do that with Phillip Rivers. But like you said, Derek, if it doesn't work out, it's not like a huge loss. It's not like they're going, yes, we could say they're going all in, but it's not like, if this doesn't work out, they're not still in a really good place, because the Colts are. I mean, they have one of the younger teams in the league outside of a few veteran players, young, good, defensive and offensive core. And, they'll address it more in the draft and add some players in the draft. And if you do draft a quarterback as well, obviously that's significant in developing that guy. So if Phillip Rivers doesn't work out, then you can, kind of give that guy some live reps in the 2020 season. And so, all that stuff is just super interesting to me, how the Colts have approached this and how they feel like, at least for 2020, they can live with, potentially more of a gunslinger mentality. They can work with that as opposed to a guy who's kind of scared to pull the trigger, and a guy who's scared, to make the big play. A guy who's not a big play guy like Jacoby Brissett, like we saw last year. More of a gunslinger than a game manager, I guess. That's kind of what they prefer. That's what that speaks to me, at least.
Yeah, and obviously you have a lot of good things with Phillip Rivers coming into the package. Like we obviously mentioned, Sirianni and Reich both were coaches with him while they were still in San Diego. So there's connection there. They all know their tendencies. And then obviously for the first time in a long time, Phillip Rivers is actually going to have a good offensive line protecting him. He's going to
Yeah.
continue to have a good surplus of running backs. And obviously, if we can fix up that wide receiver core, which is something we'll definitely do this draft with so many other wide receivers still available, and obviously a good defense on the other side as well. Basically, I think the only question I have left with this is with this contract, Cody. What do you think this does for the Colts now in the draft? I mean, we now know they have 2 second rounders. It's pretty much what their
Hmm.
head front is now. Basically the same thing as last year. What do you think happens here? Do you think that Ballard pulls the trigger to move up into the first round with those 2 seconds to get somebody early, maybe the quarterback that we think of for the future? Or do you think that we just play it safe and get a quarterback in the second round that somebody's eyeing and then continue to help with the wide receiver core?
Yeah, and I think it all depends, Derek, and this will be interesting for Ballard and company to kind of watch as the draft progresses. Who knows? Like, I've seen crazier things in the draft. Well, what if there's one of those guys at 13? Probably if I had to choose one of them, it'd probably be Jordan Love, just because I feel like he wasn't projected to be that high, and then all of a sudden he just got really, really hot. Like, everybody was talking about him and stuff like that. But what if something happens where Jordan Love falls out of the top 10, top 15, and the Colts decide we have the ammunition now, we can go trade up. What if they include a second round pick and then another pick and one, a player that they feel like they can move on from? The Colts have the ammunition to do that, and so it'll be interesting if one of those quarterbacks that are have been projected up there fall, or if the Colts already have a quarterback that they're eyeing. Anthony Gordon, one of those guys in the second round, and they like some of the traits that they have there. It'll just be really interesting to me to see what the Colts do. I certainly think that if one of those quarterbacks that was projected to go up there, that we were projecting potentially to go to the Colts at 13 when they had that draft pick still, I think the Colts would be all over it. I think they really would. I think it would make sense. In the past, when we kind of looked at Chris Ballard, his draft approach, he's been so frugal about, I want more picks. But this is an interesting year because now he has a young core of guys. Back in 2017, 2018, he didn't really have a lot of those young core pieces that he can build around. He didn't have an Eric Armstead. He didn't have some of these guys that he has now. And so it's kind of like the Colts have they have a good range of depth amongst the positions. I feel like they have an overall pretty solid roster. I would say the thing that's missing for me is still some elite talent at those key premium positions, and I'm talking about obviously the pass rush we've talked about, even like wide receiver. That's something we've talked about, and I would say definitely quarterback. That's something that they always say you have to get to their quarterback. You have to have a good quarterback, and I think that's what the Colts are going to do, and I think the Colts are wise enough with their offensive staff to realize, and they have such great minds on that offensive side of the ball with Nick Sirianni, Frank Reich, all those guys, Mike Groh, all those guys, that they believe that they can develop a quarterback. So I think definitely I wouldn't rule it out at all because the Colts absolutely have the resources and the ability to trade up there and get their guy. It just depends who they eye. It depends really how the draft plays out there in the first round. But I would not rule it out at all. I am definitely going to still watch the first round because I think the Colts could potentially make a move here. Some people would say, oh, Chris Ballard wouldn't do that. Well, you wouldn't think Chris Ballard would trade away his number 13th overall pick for a player. But, I mean, things have changed now that your star quarterback retired. And so I would not be surprised in the least bit. And the Colts have the resources to do it, like I said. So that's kind of my take on it. It'll be interesting to see now. Crazy that the draft's coming up very quickly. Obviously, the draft is still staying the same date, the last weekend in April, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So I'll be watching that entire weekend. I'm really excited, man. I'm so excited to see what happens there and what the Colts decide to do there. But yeah, that's
Yep.
kind of my take on the quarterback position as far as the draft goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a fun free agency so far for Colts fans. I don't think
Hmm.
we've had this much engagement in a free agency in quite a while. So it's really nice to see Chris Ballard making some moves. We're going to see if those pay off this next season, and there's certainly a lot more time. So I can't wait to see what happens. But anyway, that's going to be it for this one. So again, just for anyone that was wondering, yeah, the Colts basically signed Phillip Rivers to a 1-year, $25 million contract. So Phillip Rivers is going to be spending next year in a Colts uniform, most likely being the starter. So that's going to be it for this. Cody, do you have any other words before we take off?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Derek, now obviously this changes the Colts draft approach, and it changes our mock draft. So we'll definitely have to be working on those, come out with some new mock drafts here in the next couple weeks and get those posted for you guys. But super excited, man. This is the best week of the year, in my opinion. It's so exciting and so interesting to see where all these different players go. But
can we both agree that, like, over the last few days, like, this has been the break that, like, sports fans and NFL fans needed?
yes,
Like,
especially
please.
Colts fans.
Yeah, this has been so fun the last 36
yes.
hours.
It's been so fun to basically watch all the other AFC South teams basically implode.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you'd call the Titans imploding, but I mean, giving Ryan Tannehill that contract is kind of questionable in my opinion.
The Titans really haven't gotten like that much better. They just haven't gotten worse in a sense,
Right.
but like the Jags and the Texans have easily gotten worse.
Dude, the Jags are completely selling their entire defense. It's wild.
Well, hey,
they got
Joe Schobert today. They got Joe Schobert.
Yeah.
So Joe's a good linebacker. Don't get me wrong. He is definitely a good linebacker, but everyone knows you need more than an inside linebacker to basically refix your defense.
And then the Texans don't even want to talk about that. I mean, good grief. How do you not get a first-round pick out of DeAndre Hopkins?
I know. You look at the Stephon Diggs pick, and you're like, they got that for Stephon Diggs, but they couldn't get that out of Arizona. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. It's really a bump. It's really a shame that the Colts are in the Texans division because I would have loved the Colts to do that deal.
Yeah, honestly, I honestly would have. I mean, that was the ESPN graded the that pick out of for the Cardinals. They graded that a B plus. I don't know how you can give that anything other than an A. I mean, that was phenomenal to get. And then they gave the Texans an F. I mean, that was blatantly obvious.
I mean, dude. There's man. I'm just like looking at the Cardinals' offense. It's wild. Like having Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk, and now DeAndre Hopkins. Like with Kyler Murray and Kenyon Drake, like they're unstoppable. It's going to be
that's a good collection of offensive firepower there, and they're gonna improve their offense by getting a left tackle this draft. I'm sure they're pretty much poised now to get at one of the best left tackles coming out of college. So that definitely makes sense for them. So, hey, congratulations to Arizona. I mean, Arizona and Miami, those teams are making money moves this offseason, man. Holy cow.
Man, that NFC West is going to be something special next year. It's wild to think about that NFC West. Like they have literally all 4 teams could make the playoffs next year. It's crazy.
Yep, very, very true. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this. We really hope you enjoyed, and go Colts.